Hey, my name is Patrick Long with Soku Systems. Today I want to talk to you about one of the most powerful tools available to all of our businesses for automation. So I've shown a few things about make.com and how you can make simple automations to do things in your business like update a record or maybe create an invoice and things like that. But sometimes we need to do things that are a bit more complicated than that, and we've got to write a lot of code to do it. So inside of make.com or N8N or other automation platforms, you can technically run code, but you can usually only run a single file, and the modules that you use to do that in these platforms are pretty simple. If we need to make an actual project that does something a little more complex with multiple files and an entire directory structure and something that's production ready, we need to probably move it to a different environment. So instead of standing up an entire server and configuring it to talk to the rest of the world and everything else, which can get expensive and complicated, we're going to use something called GitHub Actions. This is a super simple way to run real production code in a free way through GitHub. So GitHub Actions lets you have a ton of free runtime every single month. And for small businesses that, aren't doing like super heavy processing to every single customer and doing some sort of SaaS product, GitHub Actions is a godsend, and it's perfect. It will do pretty much whatever you need it to do. And if you do end up needing more compute power, I think you just pay a little bit each month and you will probably get more than what you need. So let me show you the first thing that I made in GitHub Actions here. So this is a pretty simple repository that I made to strip out metadata from my images before I post them online. And in my writing business, where I take a lot of product photos, that can be really important because your metadata can show what kind of camera you were using and put GPS coordinates to where you took the image at. So I really don't want to post those things on the internet, right? So I made a super simple repo. I'm not going to walk through this, but to make an actual GitHub action, you need to make something called a workflow inside of a .github file. And this goes in your actual repository, not just something you set up inside of a setting in GitHub somewhere. And you make this YAML file, and we're not going to walk through this, but just know that there's a couple of little sections here where we set up what kind of environment we're going to have, make sure we're on the right branch to our repo, install our Python dependencies, and then actually run our image cleaner file here. So I do that like all the way down here. And this is a little complex too, but I'm going to give it something called image list. And this is actually coming from the event that we are going to call with make.com. So we're going to get those images inside of make.com through an upload usually, and then we're going to send them to this action. And then when it's done, I actually put a unique identifier on the end of every single image. So I need to get those new image names back out. So I make an artifact that I can go retrieve after this is done. And that's what this little last part does. For the actual file that does the real work, it's not very complicated. All this does is it loops through the images right here for image in the image list. It'll download it, process the image, which just means take out that EXIF data, give it a unique identifier, and then it's going to upload this to Google Drive because that's what I use for my business. And then if I was using an image from Google Drive, sometimes I send it straight from a different URL. It'll go back and delete that original image because I don't want to have two images taking up drive space, right? All right, so here we are in my scenario. So this is going to look a little messy. I made it quite a while ago, but I've named it process original images here. So every time that I have a writer or an editor upload or edit an article, they get the chance to upload images to go with it, right? And when they do, I loop through them here. So the first thing is I'm going to make sure that we've got some images, get the article because it has a link to all of the images, figure out what folder they're in Google Drive, and then loop over every single one of them. I also, personal preference, but I choose to send my images to ChatGPT and ask it to give it a name. So when you take a picture on your phone, you usually get the name as like IMG underscore a number, right? And that's not very descriptive, and it's not very good for SEO, etc. So I get ChatGPT to name them, and it looks at the actual image, and it'll name it like something that is in the image. And then I'm going to format that data for the image cleaner repo that I made. So here you can see that it has that event trigger type, and then that client payload. If we go back here, you can see the event, which is the make trigger. So we match those up here. So make trigger here, make trigger there, and then client payload images. We had to make this data structure, but you can see client payload dot images. So make sure that those line up. All right, once we actually have our data formatted, we can send it into the GitHub post request. So you'll need to check GitHub docs to figure out exactly the exact URL and all the headers that you need. You need to do some authorization, so not just anybody can send a request to your GitHub action. And then we're going to make sure that the body be raw JSON, and we're going to feed it that JSON string that we just made inside of Make with our custom format here. Really important. So then the rest of this action is really long and kind of ugly, but what it is going and getting that artifact that I made with the new image names. There are better ways to do this now. Now that I've learned how to not to do it. This works perfectly fine. So I've got some sleeps, and then it goes and checks the run ID. Maybe that's something that you need to do. Get the run status so you can send different requests back to your repo to see if it succeeded or if it failed or whatever. And that could be very useful depending on what you're doing. But for me here, I didn't really need to do that. The best way, if you really need to receive data back out of your action, would be to give it a webhook to send it to, and then catch that webhook here inside of make.com. So if you're looking at this and you're like, wow, this is a lot going on in this scenario just to work with one little image cleaner script in GitHub Action, you would be right. But I've made this into a scenario that I can call out of all of my other scenarios whenever I want to process an image and make sure that it's clean and secure. I just call this one scenario and reuse it over and over again. But the most important part is that this is now a foundation for a way to use any GitHub action. So once you figure it out once, learn how to format your JSON request, then it doesn't matter what we're doing in Make anymore because we've already got that blueprint laid out, and we can build whatever we want inside of GitHub, as simple or as complex as it may be, and then call it here through Make really easily. So really quickly, I want to show you the difference between a super simple GitHub action and a full-blown software product. So Soku Systems has a software suite called Soku Suite. There's a few different modules inside of there, and we usually make a new module every time we see like a repeated need in the industry. Instead of duplicating software, we try to make a module and give it to all of our clients. So this one is brand new. I'm still developing it. It hasn't launched yet, but it's called Anvil, and it's going to do all of the data processing that we need for common data types like images, PDFs, audio. I'm working on a few more data types. Of course, you can see I've uploaded a few images here. I can change their image format, strip the metadata, all the stuff I was talking about, make a reusable template for however I'm changing these images, and go down here and crop it some more. Here's me with a bear. And this is also going to have an API that we can call from make.com. So the other modules inside of Soku Suite are Panorama. You can have a broad view of all of the statistics for your business. Conduit is a deliverable tracker, and then Cadence is a text-to-speech platform. So all of these modules and Soku Suite as a whole is free to use to our clients. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to sokusystems.com/soku-suite. So that was a quick example of how we can use GitHub Actions to automate things in our businesses that are just slightly too complex for make.com or N8N. Today I just did a simple image cleaner script that compressed images and removed their metadata, but it can be used for a whole lot more than that. So there's a good chance that if there's a task in your business that can be triggered based on an event or a schedule, that it would work really well inside of a GitHub action. Maybe you want to do some web scraping or competitor analysis or have a large AI content pipeline. Whatever it is, if it's too much for make.com, we can probably get it to work inside of a GitHub action. But if you want to know more about those automations, check out some of the other videos on this channel. If you want help creating these automations for your business, we would love to help you. Just go to sokusystems.com/call and book a discovery call with us. We'll go over what your business needs and how exactly we can speed up your processes and make you a much more efficient machine of a business. So I'll see you then.